Welcome to Career Tools. Today's topic, how to effectively use HR. Chapter 1, develop a relationship. Here we go. Well, Mark, you used to say that you hated HR. And
yes.
Now you...
To my chagrin. I admit it. I
know.
Right?
But you don't say that anymore. And,
no, I don't.
We don't hate HR.
I was wrong.
As a matter of fact, we love great HR.
Yeah.
We just hate bad HR.
Yeah.
There happens to be some of that out there. Just like there's bad IT,
and bad
marketing, and bad managers in
bad
general.
Engineers.
Right? So,
very few bad engineers.
Because we're engineers. Of course we can say that. Many companies are too small to have HR. But
right.
Management companies which are big enough to have an HR department, sometimes they wish it didn't. Because sometimes when you need help, they won't give it to you. Or when you don't want help, they want to tell you about
HR,
a bunch of rules.
Yeah, they got co-opted a lot of times by legal. Because when there's a legal case, when there's a wrongful termination case, there's a lot of drama there. And so people tend to be more risk averse than they are willing to take. They're more risk averse than they probably should be based on
exactly.
human math, the emotional math.
Yeah. Look, and if managers had been doing their jobs for years and years and years, we wouldn't have to have a need for HR. But the fact is, we love great HR because HR plays an important role in many organizations.
And if you want HR to be better, forget about HR as an unknown entity or somebody somewhere else. If you want better HR, it starts with, what do you want from HR? And anytime you want anything from anybody, that starts with a relationship.
Right. And that's what we're going to talk about.
Exactly.
Developing a relationship with HR.
And this is so important. This is chapter 1. And we're going to do chapters 2 and 3 right after it as a way to send a message to everybody. Not only to counteract the feeling out there in manager tools land and career tools land that Mark hates HR and so it's okay for me to hate HR, because it's not okay, guys. It was wrong for me to say it that way. I meant it, but only in the sense that so much of HR was poorly done. But you know what? Let's not complain about what's poorly done. Let's do what we're supposed to do well. Let's hold up our end of the bargain. And the first part of any relationship with any internal support provider is to develop a relationship. We said this before. You've got to have a relationship with somebody in HR. You've got to have a relationship with somebody in accounts payable. You've got to have a relationship with somebody in payroll. You just do.
No, this is no different than the relationship between a manager and a direct, right? Our trinity, the first part of the management trinity, is developing a relationship with your directs, right? And why would this be any different?
Yeah. So, first rule, obviously, develop a relationship. It's simple. All right? A simple question. Guys, quickly, where does your HR representative sit? Do you know where he or she is? Okay?
90% of the people have no clue.
No, exactly, right? And by the way, those of you at small companies, pay attention now, because someday, usually rule of 150 starts getting involved. You're going to have HR, and you want to be, if any manager has a good relationship with HR, it ought to be you, okay? Okay, so let's go a little further, though. What's their name? Okay, first and last name. Do you know their background, right? Where were they before here? Maybe they got a labor law degree, undergraduate degree. Maybe they went to a special human resources business minor, if you will. Maybe they're an engineer. Maybe they're a marketing person. Who knows?
Now, you've gone too far. Some people, I know, people are listening going, okay, I know where they are. At least I know what floor they're on.
Oh, okay, but what floor they're on doesn't count.
Doesn't count, right?
Right. You have to know exactly where they sit.
Okay, well, some people, not very many, but some people in smaller organizations, if there's only 10 people in the organization, maybe you know. You probably don't have an HR person at that point. But some people know where they are, right? Where they sit. And they even know their name because they've had to, because they got to turn in their evaluations. But when you start getting into like, oh my God, what's their background? Where do they come from? 99%.
Do they have kids, right? Yeah. And look, the simple thing is if you can't answer those questions, you don't have a relationship, right? Now, I find something interesting. I've discovered something in the cube farms that exist in so many big companies today. It's almost identical, the number of people whose name you know and where they sit. If you know where they sit, you know their name. If you don't know their name, you don't know where they sit. So if I ask you, do you know where they sit? And the person says yes, I assume they know that person's name. Yeah. There are rare exceptions, but as a general rule, if you know somebody's name, you've been to their desk.
I've never thought about that before.
Yeah.
I would make the correlation between having a relationship and knowing where they sit.
Yeah, sure.
If you don't know where somebody sits, it's unlikely you have a relationship with them, right?
Yeah, I suppose phone and email and so on. But you got to be careful about overdoing phone and email and thinking Your buddies, right? And look, if you would say to Mike and I, okay, I believe I have a relationship, and I'm talking to email all the time, and you don't know where they sit, I'd be willing to bet that other person would think I don't have a relationship. They don't have a relationship with you.
That's my guess. 99% of the time.
So no matter who you are, and no matter what the situation you're in, you get better results with people you have to work with if you take the time to develop a relationship, guys. It's as simple as that. This is an engineer, a reformed engineer, and Mike too. It's all about people. It's Horstman's first law. Okay. Now, I'll tell you why this is particularly important with HR, because generally speaking, when HR is involved in your situation, A, there's a crisis or some drama, and B, it involves your people. Now, those two things together means that when you're talking to them, there's some heightened anxiety. There's some urgency. Look, if things are normal and you're not talking to HR, and therefore you don't develop a relationship with HR, when you go to HR because it involves your people and because there's some drama or crisis and there's a need for a special dispensation, or you've got a problem with one of your directs and you're looking to see if it's okay to do what you're going to do, or what are the rules, what are the things, so on, it's then that you don't have a relationship.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like relationship with your doctor. If you never go for checkups and you never have a chance to see your doctor when you're well, right? And the only time you have a conversation with your doctor is when you're in crisis, when you're sick, when you're getting ready to die. Yeah. It's going to be a very different relationship, right?
Yeah. In fact, if you go to that HR person and you don't have a great experience, I think this was the language I was using in terms of I hate HR. Actually, I had a good relationship with my HR people, but because so many managers told me the story about how terrible their relationships were, it's like, or how bad the experience was, what I didn't realize was the managers weren't doing their job. They absolutely were not doing their job. And again, we're going to say it again, guys, HR often toes the company line because the manager hasn't done what he or she needs to do, and the company is worried that they're at risk. And so they're defending the company, when in fact we should have been, as managers, defending the company by dotting our I's and crossing our T's and doing our daily blocking and tackling and our weekly one-on-ones and so on, and giving feedback and so on, so that there's no big surprises, so that we're well aware of potential problems that are going to happen. If you go to your HR person only when you have a problem, as you say, and you expect them to fix it, or if you expect them to bend the rules, what's the single biggest determinant of whether or not they're going to fix it or whether or not they're going to bend the rules? Whether or not you have a relationship with them. If you don't have a relationship with your peers, if you don't have a relationship with your directs, and you go to them and ask for something, or you go wanting help, or you say, I need this or I need that, you're going to get less results out of people with whom you have less relationship with.
And frankly, it's just like the doctor, right? If you see a doctor early, and things start to go south, they can help you. They have some expertise. Yeah. They have experience that they can bring to bear on the problem. But they can't if you go in and say, hey, my direct, who's had an anger problem for quite a long time, just hit another employee. Yeah. It's too late. Yeah. It's too late at that point.
Now you're in crisis about the hitting the other employee, rather than, let's see what we can do for this guy. Let's get him employee assistance or something like that. Exactly.
Bring the resources of the organization to bear on the problem, right?
Yeah.
Too late.
It's the difference between preventativeness and wellness and surgery. Right?
There you go.
No offense, but if you have a choice, preventativeness and wellness is better.
A little cheaper. Right? A little better. A little more effective.
Yeah. When it comes to surgery, you have to sign a form. If you don't know this, folks, surgery that requires general anesthesia, there's a little part of the form that says, I understand I might die. Okay? Taking 2 aspirin or working out a little bit more, they don't make you sign a form that says you might die. Okay? And if you mess up something big with HR and you have a judgment go against you in the firm, of course the firm's going to pay. Your career it may not be over, but it's significantly reduced.
It's not good.
Okay. So look, guys, if you're new in your role, this is easy. Go find HR. Ask questions. And it's funny. I know so many smart people and they say, well, people think I'm smart, but I'm constantly asking questions. And then there are people that want to appear smart and they don't ask questions because they think that asking questions implies that you don't know. Look, guys, people know that you don't know. If you're new, they know you don't know. So you tell people, I don't know where HR is. Anybody know? I'm going to go find them. I'm going to go talk to them.
Yeah. But 5 years later, and you ask the question, then you appear stupid.
Yeah, then you look dumb, right? So go find HR and then ask them about their structure. How are you structured? Is there a generalist assigned to me? Or is it done based on specialists? Find out what the structure is. Your boss probably has it, but again, if you don't want to ask your boss, that's fine. I wouldn't have any problem recommending to everybody. Ask your boss, who would you recommend I talk to in HR? Who would you recommend I talk to in accounts payable? Who would you recommend I talk to in payroll? Do you have a relationship that you can leverage? Depending upon your relationship with your boss. Now, if you don't have a good relationship with your boss, fine, do it yourself, okay? But you go and find him, and you go to HR and you say, hi, my name is Mark Horstman, and I'm a new manager, and I'm just wondering how you're structured, and who would I come talk to? Whom do I need to develop a relationship with? And look, if you've been around a while, and they've been around a while, and you've seen their names on an org chart, but you've never talked to them, and maybe you believed in what Mark said in terms of, I hate HR, and so you stayed away from them, and you've never met them, there's nothing wrong with going to their cube, sticking out your hand and say, hey, I'm so sorry. My name is Mark Horstman. I'm sorry. I realize that I've been here and you've been here, and I know you're my HR rep, and I've never come and said hello in person. I'm Mark Horstman. I'm part of Mike Ozan's organization. I'm on the implementation team for Project X. I'm really glad you're part of our team. I know you don't come to all the meetings. That's okay. I just, you're my rep, and I just want to say hi. And I promise you the HR person is going to look kind of funny and say, is there a problem?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because that's what people do. They wait until there's a problem.
Okay, so now tell me why you're really here.
Yeah. And say, actually, no, I just figured if you and I were going to have to work together, and usually if we're working together, it'll be a crisis or a drama, or I'll have a question that'll be a little bit tension-filled for me because I'll be in an area I want to understand. I want to know who I'm talking to. That's all.
You just fired somebody, didn't you?
No, I really didn't.
Somebody assaulted somebody in the organization?
No.
You said something inappropriate in the meeting, and you think one of your directors is going to come to me here shortly about a problem?
If somebody had assaulted somebody on my team, Mike, I would have definitely emailed you. And look, this is the easiest thing in the world. This will shock some people because of the way we talk about building your network. But HR is part of your network. Your network is not only for your job search. It's internal to the organization as well. So after you meet them, let's say Ozan is the HR person and Horstman is the manager. What I would do is say, hey, Mike, I'm sorry we haven't met before. I've been here a year. I know you've been my rep, and stupidly, I haven't come by. So I apologize. And I'm Mark, and I'm in floor 3, section E, desk 132. Come by anytime you like. Happy to visit with you. My door's open for HR, and I hope your door's open for me. And you'd say, yeah, totally, of course, right? And then, of course, you'd say, but why are you really here? Yeah. Like, no, really, I'm the one manager who's going to develop a relationship with you. And it always amazes fellow managers that, oh, I know my HR rep. She's cool. I like her. Like, really? I hate those guys. Horstman says to hate those guys. And then I go, oh, Horstman puts his hand to his forehead. But look, here's what you do. You're building a network. This is part of your internal network. Folks, Control-Shift-K. For those of you who don't know, who aren't longtime listeners, Control-Shift-K is the old, it may still be true, way to create a task in Outlook. For those of you who have Outlook, which I love and don't have, and you type in, stay in touch with, in this case, Mike be my HR rep, stay in touch with Mike Ozan, HR. Okay? And then I hit Control-G, and I put down every 3 months, right? I put down a recurrence of every 3 months. Now look, if I run into Mike every couple of weeks in the hallway, whereas before I walk by him and now I say, hey, how's it going? Good to see you. And you say to me, what are you working on? I said, this and this and this. And you say to me, anything you need? I said, no, I'm good. We're all good, right? And you might say something like, hey, actually, we're going to be prototyping a new review system, and I wondered if you might help. I'd say, sure, I'll be happy to help. Now, we'll come back to that issue. There are some people who won't go into HR, won't talk to HR because they're fearful that now they'll be asked for things from HR. But folks, I just said I'd come back to this, but let me just address it now. That's not a problem, okay? You don't mind doing that, okay? You can say no to those kinds of requests if you're swamped, but if you want to have a relationship with HR, which HR helps you when the stuff hits the fan, the way you increase the chances they'll help you is when they're prototyping a new review, you tell them, sure, I'll help. Then you go to a couple of meetings, and maybe you have to write a review in a little bit different format, and hopefully if you know how to write reviews, any review system is easy. The review system is not the problem. It's not having the data throughout the year to deliver it.
Well, there's no good relationship where it's just taking, right?
Exactly. That's the point I was getting.
Right? Yeah. You've got to give a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there are some managers going, I'm not doing this because I only want what I want from HR. So that's fine.
Well, then, don't start then.
As my dad used to say, you can take more than you give, but only for a little while until they run you out of town. Okay? So you can Control-Shift-K their name and Control-G. Now, if I run into the hallway a couple of times in a given month, then at 3 months later, I've seen you a couple of times. I don't need to actually send you an email, right? Now, look, if I read an article in Harvard Business Review or Fortune about HR or about the changes in HR or the growing specialties in HR, I might forward it on to you, but I don't really have to. If I run into you every once in a while, if I see you in a meeting, I say, hey, Mike, how's it going? You say, hey, Mark, how's it going? And my buddy says to me, who's that? I said, that's my HR rep. And say, what? What? Yeah, dude, and I would lean to him, I'd say, dude, you got to know somebody in HR, because if the stuff hits the fan and you ain't ready and you don't know anybody in there, you're begging. I'm not begging. If I have a problem and I call Ozan, he'll answer because he'll know it's my line. And he knows my cell number too. And I'll get better service because I know somebody over there. And he says, oh, you're doing it selfishly. I say, no, I'm not. I'm really not. This is part of my job, is to have support internally. And if I want good support, I'm willing to invest in the relationship. Right now, I've got nothing out of this relationship other than Mike seems like a nice guy, and it takes me time. If I spend 5 minutes once a month, and in return, I save hours of angst and misery when the stuff hits the fan. What kind of return is that? It's priceless, right? It's $1 billion over zero, practically. Yeah. So Control-Shift-K and then Control-G, and you're good to go. And look, if I see you in the quarter, I can say, hey man, how's it going? It's not a big deal, but it's better than nothing. And if I finally discover it's you when I'm in crisis and I've been walking by you in the halls and I've been ignoring you, I promise you, you as the HR person are thinking to yourself, yeah, you ignore me until you need me.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now we're doing this on my terms and not on your terms. And guys, that's not a ding on HR. You're supposed to have a relationship. We as managers are supposed to have a relationship with HR. If we don't make the relationship with HR, I hate to say it this way, but HR does hold a couple more cards than we do. They have knowledge, information, power, relationships that can help us in our situation. And without a relationship, we're begging.
Right. And that HR generalist, they may be supporting 50 or 60 managers, right? There's one of them, and there's many of you managers. So, and the great thing is this is just one more distinction between the average, i.e. poor manager, and somebody who's at the top of their game.
Yeah. And look, other examples. When you see them in the hallway, say hi. When your team wins a big contract and you think there's going to be hiring, send your HR person an email. Hey, just a quick heads up. This contract means we're likely to get approval for 10 new heads. Joe's going to be in charge of hiring. If you haven't met yet, I'll be happy to introduce you. Probably you'll be exchanging resumes and process questions with Joe. I'll read him in. If we need to have a brief meeting, I'm happy to meet with the two of you, right? This is no problem. In a lot of companies, a lot of the nitty-gritty of HR has either been outsourced or it's computer generated. There's a portal, there's a help desk. And look, that makes it harder for you to develop a relationship, but it doesn't make it impossible. Okay. Somewhere there are still HR people. You may have to hunt a little bit. It's 5 minutes to hunt. And ask 3 or 4 of your friends. Look, if you've been at your company a couple of years and you're a manager and you don't have an HR person, there are other managers around. Anybody know anybody HR? Who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know? And if they say, well, I know an HR legal person, that's a place to start. Go and say, hey, Joe referred me to you. I'm wondering who my generalist is, or if we have a problem with employment or hiring or harassment, anything like that, who's the person that's going to be supporting me? And then I'd say, well, we don't do it that way. Fine. Well, I'll start with you. And, I'd love for there to be somebody that I can talk to. And they'll usually come up with a name. And then you just have to focus on that person for a few months. It doesn't take much at all. Something else that people miss. People say, well, once it's outsourced, there's nothing I can do about it. Wrong. Okay. Hunting a little bit harder may mean talking to the outsourced folks. Don't dismiss those folks. They may be service providers, but you're going to get better service from them if, in fact, you have a relationship. I had a situation once where there's a payroll problem, and the guy in payroll says, we don't do it, ADP does. And I said, well, okay. Who do I talk to over there? Well, I don't know. That's all done corporate. So I picked up the phone, and I called ADP in New Jersey, I want to say. And I said, look, I got a problem. I'm at this company. I need this, and he said, well, this is really not the right number. Well, can you tell me where there would be something? The guy said investor relations. I remember. I'm like, no.
Investor relations.
That's probably, I'm not an investor. I said, but somebody in operations. So I actually got a senior executive admin. She says, this is unusual. I said, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a young manager. Forgive me. She says, but I know who it is. I mean, I can get you to the people that have client relationships. And she says, it's going to actually be a salesperson, but they're going to know the people who actually do what they do. And I got the salesperson for our company, and then this person referred me to the person in operations that did the check thing. Somebody's check had been printed, but it was illegible. The bank, and the guy was like, I need the money. Now, what ended up happening was I wrote the guy a check. I said, here's a check from me to you, and I'll figure out how to do it. When you get your check from the company, I trust you. When we get you a new check from ADP, a special payroll check, special cut, which I found out later, there was a standard process for me to go through, which I didn't follow, and I admit I didn't know the process, and yet ADP cut the guy a new check because I said, look, here's the thing. And unfortunately at the time, there was no cell phone, email, picture taking, anything like that. So I had to mail the check back to them. I FedExed it, right? And they gave me an office number and everything at ADP. And the guy got it and said, okay, good. Now, again, my guy was made whole by the check I wrote for him. But they said, wow, the guy actually at ADP says, wow, that was really bad. I said, yeah, sorry. And the bank wouldn't cash it. And the guy was furious at me and at you guys. And he says, yeah, it's just sometimes the machines do that. And it occurs to me now, everybody's thinking, well, what about direct deposit? Well, guys, some guys don't want direct deposit. Yeah. A long time ago, it wasn't as prevalent as it is now.
Yeah. The fact is, regardless of the problem, there's always somebody who can help you.
Yep.
And if you have a relationship ahead of time, like we're suggesting here with HR, it goes a lot more smoothly.
My general rule is I try to make 5 phone calls. This is my unofficial general rule. I try to make 5 phone calls to solve a problem. Okay, find somebody. And by the way, I'm never really focused on the problem as much as I am finding a person. That's what I'm trying to do, is finding a person. Okay, I forget about the problem. I don't tell people I want this problem solved because they'll see it differently. I say, I'm looking for the person who can do this. And then if I get to that person, even if I get voicemail, they'll call me back. And then the rule I have regarding my directs is I'll make 10 calls for my directs. Because usually if it's a problem for me, I can get somebody else involved at the right level and get things done. But if it's one for my directs and they're not able to solve it, I need to be willing to make more phone calls. So it's 5 for me, 10 for my directs.
Yeah, it's interesting. And this is a great lesson for high C's in particular, right? Because they're trying to solve the problem.
Oh, exactly.
And they're all over the place trying to solve the problem. And really, they could spend a lot less time, be a lot more effective if they just found the person who already knows what the solution is, right?
And I often describe networks as you have one connection, and you think, well, that's not that much. But you have to multiply that by all of their connections. And that's why we say develop a relationship with somebody in HR. And frankly, I would be willing to, it's my recommendation. I promise you, if I were in HR, I would know people in accounts payable. I'd certainly know people in payroll, because people think of payroll and HR as going together, right? It's the people stuff. It's you guys do that. You're corporate, whatever. And I would be the master of internal relationships in finance and accounts payable and employee assistance and all those areas.
Yeah. This is where high eyes have advantage. I don't know if, I know you know this, and I don't know if you've ever said it this way before, but there is much more leverage in relationships than there is in smarts, and your own educating yourself in terms of smarts. Much more leverage, right?
There's no way that a manager, look, guys, to be clear, you can't keep up with everything that's going on in HR and finance. But HR and finance and employee assistance and IT, for that matter, they all know. They're supposed to know. They stay current. You can't catch up. And there are too many, I believe, high D and high C managers who think their job is to solve the problem. Yeah. And they forget that what they need to do is find a person.
There you go.
You focus on the person, much easier. And the way you do that is develop a relationship. And this goes back to fundamental rules. Wendy often says about Career Tools, the most important cast, we refer to it again and again, is build your network, right? And this is an example of building your network internally. You need to have a strong external network and a strong internal network. And one of the core pieces of your internal network is your HR person. Develop a relationship, spend some time, stay in touch, Control-Shift-K, Control-G, so that when this stuff hits the fan, you're not begging.
There you go. Thanks, my friend.
You bet, partner.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. That's it. We'll see you next week. In the meantime, have a great one. So long.